Hi guys, welcome back to Nairobi Legal Insights. In this week's video, I want us to focus on performance of a contract by a stranger. Now, we may have a scenario whereby a stranger, meaning that a third party who was not originally involved in the contract, goes ahead to perform certain work and he or she expects a payment. So how do courts handle such a scenario? And if you're a stranger who has gone ahead to perform certain duties which no one actually ever instructed you to perform, then to what extent will you be requiring to be compensated? Is it going to work out? Will you get anything in return for doing something that nobody actually forced you to do? Now, as far as contract law is concerned, and taking you back to a previous video, we may have certain instances where a party may be considered as a stranger to a contract. We previously discussed about the introductory clause of a contract, and that is the part of a contract where we describe the parties. And I'm sure if you've seen a contract, you will see the names of the parties being talked about. And we also have a signature section where parties sign off. Now, we may have an instance whereby maybe, let's say we have 3 different parties to a contract and they have been identified in introductory clause, but when it comes to signing off the contract, only 2 sign. Person A and B sign, and C doesn't actually sign off that contract. In this particular instance, person C will be considered a stranger to this contract. Now, the second scenario is that we may also have a situation whereby a party's name may not appear in introductory clause of a contract, and that party goes ahead to actually sign off the contract. In this similar circumstance, such a party is also considered a stranger to a contract. So at all times, you need to actually pay close attention to the introductory clause and also the signature section where parties actually go ahead and commit. Remember that signature is commitment to the contract that you're actually entering into. Now, having understood those 2 scenarios as far as drafting a contract is concerned, we may also have a scenario whereby a complete stranger who was never part of a contract, like I stated earlier, will actually just come and perform certain duties and expect the parties to a contract to actually remunerate him. So what happens? What is the position of the courts if you are a stranger to a contract and you want to be paid? What is the position of a court if you are one of the people who walks around, you find someone's car, maybe it's a street, you come and wash someone's car, you wash my car and I've not told you anything to do as far as cleaning my car is concerned, and after washing it you expect me to pay you. So what are your entitlements? Do you actually have any entitlement in any case to begin with? So this is going to be the main purpose of this particular video. One thing we need to note as students is that the consequence of performing a contract where you're not captured as a party to a contract is that you're going to be considered as a volunteer, meaning that if I go ahead and perform certain duties and I was never part of a particular agreement, for purposes of that agreement, I'm going to be considered a volunteer. And another thing that we should note is that the law and equity does not actually favor a volunteer. And this is going to become clearer in the course of this video. Using an example so that we understand what I just discussed previously, if person A and B are originally part of a contract and we have a third party who is a stranger performing towards this contract, in this particular instance, such a stranger to a contract cannot actually benefit from the contract, meaning that if you're performing anything as far as a particular contract between certain parties is concerned and you are not originally party to that particular contract, then you're not entitled to any benefit. Obviously, we know morally we are going to feel bad about it, that someone has been actually doing something towards a contract that was meant to be between person A and B. But legally speaking, we have no principle in contract that can remedy a defect in as much as identity of parties to a contract is concerned. Meaning that if your identity was never part of the original contract, There is no principle in contract law that is actually going to entitle you to a benefit as far as this particular description is concerned. Now, courts also cannot force people into relationships. And when I talk about relationships, I mean contractual relationships. So when we have party A and B entering into a contract, and a third party has been performing, and person A or B reject that stranger cannot actually benefit from their original contract they had as two parties, then courts will not come and force a stranger into an original relationship that was actually duly entered into by only party A and B. So please note that morally you may feel bad, but there is no entitlement. There is no principle in contract law that can actually remedy such a defect as far as identifying parties to a contract is concerned. In light of the previous discussion, the position in the US could be different, whereby the entire jurisdiction is moving towards compensating volunteers. To them, they are finding ways to assist volunteers, and I'll be sharing more details and case law as to the position of the US. But as far as our jurisdiction is concerned, the law of equity will not actually assist a volunteer. Now, the rationale behind this is that if we introduce a principle that one who is not part of a contract can perform, you know clearly that such a principle can completely destroy commerce. We would then have situations whereby people would create jobs for themselves, meaning that if I'm looking for employment and you can't hire me, then I'll show up, clean your compound the first day, an entire month, and then I'll come and claim for compensation for the benefits of what I've been doing for you. I could just show up and clean your car for the entire month, then I come and claim money. Of course, this will be so problematic, meaning that people are going to force themselves into creating jobs, knowing that either way, whether you accept me as your employee or not, then at the end of the month, you'll still have to pay me. So this is the rationale behind what I'm discussing. And before we conclude, just to add on to what I just discussed, is that to avoid situations whereby someone has no skill, but they're going to force themselves onto someone, perform a certain obligation or task, and then they're going to actually come and claim for compensation for what they have done. So obviously from logic, you can actually see that this will destroy the entire commerce and commercial transactions. The other thing is that, look, there is no way I can actually stop you from doing what you're not supposed to be doing in the first place. Meaning that if you show up every day to clean my compound, I have no legal obligation to stop you from doing what you're not supposed to be doing in the first place. And so if you go ahead and do that without us having an agreement, that means that I cannot compensate you. There are no benefits you can actually get out of the work that you've been doing, because there was never a prior agreement between me and you as a person coming to clean my compound. The other thing we need to note is that, can you just imagine if we had a situation whereby the court will allow volunteers to be compensated or to actually derive some form of a benefit? What would happen is that so many people would then just go ahead and perform and force innocent parties to pay them. And obviously this could be very problematic. Now, I hope you've understood today's video. We've been talking about performance of a contract by a stranger, and whether a stranger can actually benefit from performing a certain obligation or task that in the first place no one instructed him or her to perform. Now, thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe so that you receive notifications every single time I post a new video. And then you can also follow us on our Twitter page for active engagement. You can drop me an email in case you want to reach out to me personally. Thank you. See you next time.